One of my favorite things about art is that it acts like a time capsule for the era it came from. You can tell a lot about a generation's values and beliefs just by looking at their music and media. Just take a look at rock stars from the 80s and 90s and take a wild guess which one was more disillusioned with the world. Horror works in the exact same way. Scary movies reflect what society is afraid of in that moment. Some things are just universally scary, but other things are deeply tied to the cultural context. Take slasher films, for example. Movies like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th emerged during peak Reagan-era America. After the decline of the nuclear family in the 60s and 70s, the 80s were all about bringing back traditional family values. Suburbs were seen as the safe, clean utopia, free from the crime and poverty that were beginning to spike in the cities. And what better way to exploit that belief than by turning those safe spaces into hunting grounds, where horny teenagers are stalked by supernatural killers. I don't know what's more insane, Jason Voorhees punishing teens for having premarital sex, or that the producers doubled down on this by giving him a backstory to justify this. It's easy to poke fun at today, but these movies were scary back then because they understood that American suburbanites were afraid of outside crime. And the same principle applies today. Jordan Peele's films are effective because they successfully tap into the everyday fears of Black America. The scariest horror movies correctly identify and exploit our fears, which duh. The hard part is that that's always changing. Good horror requires a deeper understanding of not just humans, but of feelings and current events. Which brings me to 2018's Hereditary. I first watched this movie back in 2019 when I was in college, and to this day, no other horror movie has affected me as much as Hereditary. A lot of this comes down to how genuinely great the script, cinematography, and performances are. Just from a technical perspective alone, Hereditary is excellent. But ultimately, I think the reason this movie is so effective is because it fundamentally understands what modern America is afraid of. In this video, I'm going to be discussing Hereditary's themes and explain how the film uses them to induce not just fright, but genuine dread in the audience. And I think the best way to do that is to compare it to another similar, yet also very different horror movie. It follows centers around a teenage girl named Jay, who after sleeping with a guy she's been dating is afflicted with a curse. Specifically, one that causes a supernatural entity that can take the form of anyone to start relentlessly pursuing her. No one else can see the monster but her and the other people infected by the curse. And as the douchebag who gives it to her, Hugh, explains,
"Just sleep with someone as soon as you can. Just pass it along. If it kills you, it'll come after me."
The only way to delay it is to pass it along by sleeping with someone else. But even then, if that person dies, the creature comes right back for you. There's a pretty obvious allegory for STDs here, and that's what most of the discourse for this movie centers on. In a society that increasingly glorifies casual sex, it personifies the consequences of this culture into a literal monster. But what makes it so terrifying is its visibility, or lack thereof. The monster only interacting with the afflicted makes it extremely isolating. Many of the chase scenes in the film happen in public spaces just to emphasize this fact. That not only are you being hunted by an eldritch horror disguised as a grandma, but that no one can save you or even empathize with you. This scene is creepy. Oh, the entity isn't just pursuing her, but toying with her as well. But imagine how ridiculous it would be if everyone else could see it too. The entity would be too busy standing trial to hunt people. Isolation is what makes this movie scary. You can see this in action in the first half of this movie. None of Jay's friends initially believe her paranoid ramblings that an invisible creature is following her, and so she's alone. She's also haunted by the moral dilemma of passing it on to others to give herself some breathing room. The film's tone is lonely and depressing. We feel for Jay, who's just a naive young girl that's put into this awful situation with no one to help her. But there's a noticeable shift in the second half of this movie. After seeing all the crazy shit going on, Jay's friends finally begin to believe she's not insane and band together to help her. With the Goonies together, Jay is able to find the strength to take control of her destiny and fight back against the monster, even seemingly succeeding. One of her childhood friends, Paul, even escapes the friend zone by voluntarily sleeping with her to take on the curse. The final scene shows the two walking side by side, united in their struggle against it. Jay had it unknowingly thrust upon her by a scumbag. Paul accepts it willingly from someone he loves. This is a pretty typical plot beat where a seemingly insurmountable obstacle is overcome with love and companionship. It's a fundamental axiom of humanity. In every culture on Earth, togetherness is celebrated as a virtue. We're inherently social creatures, and so it's not surprising that one of our primary vehicles for ideas, our stories, include themes like these. Or at least that's usually the case. Hereditary is also a film about isolation. It follows the Graham family as they navigate the emotional aftermath of a series of tragic deaths. There's also a whole cult thing going on here, but that's not really even what this movie is about. In fact, there's barely any traditional horror elements until the very end. Instead, Hereditary allocates the vast majority of its runtime to building tension between this clearly dysfunctional family. There are no moments of warmth, no laughter, just shot after shot of emotional disconnect. The characters, though they genuinely try to relate to and connect with each other, fail at every attempt. Nowhere is this more prevalent than in the famous dinner scene. I'm honestly just gonna let this play as I am incapable of doing it justice. But to set the scene, the family's reeling from the daughter's death, and Annie just blew up on Peter for not taking responsibility for it. Okay, here we go.
What about you, Mom? She didn't want to go to the party. So why was she there?
All right, we're stopping this right now. Zach? I said stop right now.
Fine. Fine.
Toni Collette had to attend therapy after shooting this movie. The scene is so horrifying because of what this family represents, and it follows in virtually every movie ever. Adversity serves as a catalyst for growth. Jay and Paul start the film as naive kids, but end it as hardened adults. I wouldn't say they're better off because of the curse, but it definitely does force them to grow to meet the challenge. It follows as really just a coming-of-age story. Growing up naturally tends to imply a loss of innocence, and there's definitely a melancholy in that. But change is inevitable. There's a comfort knowing that all of humanity is sharing the same struggle. But none of this applies to the Graham family. Charlie's death doesn't bring the family closer together, it just rips them further apart. Hereditary is aggressively dedicated to ensuring you know this. Here's the scene following that dinner altercation.
Dad, I'm so sorry.
Don't say that.
Dad, I'm so sorry.
No.
I'm sorry.
Oh, kind of a catharsis, right? The family's bonding. Well, those of you who have actually seen the film know that this isn't actually what happens. This is a cut scene that was removed specifically because of the moment of conciliation the family share with each other. Astor didn't want there to be a shred of family togetherness throughout the film. We like to think that adversity forces us to become better, that in the darkest moments we can find light in those around us, but Hereditary just rejects that. This is perhaps more relevant today than ever, where society is becoming increasingly connected, but also more and more isolated. We're constantly surrounded by digital noise, but somehow real emotional connection feels harder to come by. Hereditary preys on our fear of not being physically alone, but emotionally unreachable. The fear of having thousands of followers and zero real friends. Of being surrounded by people who are supposed to love you and understand you and just don't. Needless to say, Hereditary is a film full of despair. The family is so absurdly helpless that it's essentially another one of the film's major themes. And there's even a plot reason for why they're so completely fucked, the aforementioned cult. Everything that happens to the Graham family is predestined by a higher power, specifically one of the 8 princes of hell, Payman. Every choice the characters make is meaningless. It's all a part of the cult's grand scheme to possess Peter. No matter how hard they try to fight back, their fate is already sealed. As Benny would say,
"The game was rigged from the start."
But again, a really similar theme exists and it follows. By all accounts, the curse is inescapable. You can run from it, delay it, but you can't ever truly beat it. The movie literally throws Dostoevsky quotes at you to hammer this in.
Your soul will leave your body, and you will no longer be a person. And that this is certain. The worst thing is that it is certain.
Even the gang's seemingly successful grand stand against the monster ultimately fails. In the film's final scene, we can see they're once again being followed. It's a really creepy scene, another great use of the subtle implication that makes this movie so great. And yet, I never really found this ending to be that deflating. On the surface, this is a bad ending. The group failed in their efforts to defeat the monster, they're still being followed, there is no escape, etc. But isn't this just life? Harkening back to our loss of innocence theme, I don't think it's a stretch to say that the entity is just a manifestation of adulthood. As we grow up, we inevitably experience more pain, loss, and tragedy, but we also learn to accept and successfully confront these feelings. There's a sense of stoicism in the couple. The challenge might be overwhelming, but Jay and Paul are not the same people they once were. But coming back to Hereditary, the Graham family's curse is also inescapable, passed down through their bloodline, hence the name. We're constantly reminded throughout the film that the family is under surveillance and their future being manipulated. The camera angle mimics the perspective of someone looking inside a dollhouse, and if the metaphor wasn't obvious enough, Annie also literally builds them. But where Hereditary differs from something like It Follows is in its complete denial of agency. The film ends with the cult getting exactly what they wanted, the destruction of the family and the summoning of Payment. And sure, there's lots of horror movies with bad endings, but what makes Hereditary stand out is how little control the characters have over their lives. Since the Enlightenment, Western societies have clung to the belief that everything is within our grasp, that with enough reason, effort, and ingenuity, we can conquer the animal kingdom, the planet, and even the stars. And over time, this idea evolved into something even more iconic, the American dream. The belief that anyone can become anything so long as they work hard enough. But lately that dream is under a lot of scrutiny. Rising inequality, wage stagnation, and a growing sense of disillusionment has led many of the nation's youth to question if it even exists anymore. This ties directly into Hereditary's narrative. A major plot point I haven't mentioned yet is that the family's grandmother was a part of the cult that ultimately destroys them. She's the reason they're doomed from the start, engineering the events that lead to the demon Payman's summoning. Even after her death, her influence hangs over the family, literally sacrificing her grandchildren to fulfill her own desires. It's not hard to see the parallel here. Many young people today feel the same way about older generations, that the biggest problems we face are the result of their short-sighted decisions, that no matter how hard we try, we're already doomed. At the end of the day, horror movies are still made for humans. Even though they're trying to scare you, they still follow typical motifs that we hold as key to our humanity. The final girl trope emerged in slasher films because we want to believe that so long as you're attractive, don't have premarital sex, and don't abuse substances, we too can overcome supernatural killers. But Hereditary isn't just creepy or stimulating, it's straight up adversarial. Everything that we hold in esteem, companionship, love, agency, it denies and contorts. You will always be alone. Not even your family can save you. Being possessed by a prince of hell is just your lot in life. But as depressing as it is, credit where it's due, Hereditary definitely leaves an impact. It's such a unique take on horror and has so much to say about both people and society. I leave most horror movies completely unfazed, but Hereditary actually made me feel something, which ultimately is one of the hardest things to do in art. So congrats Hereditary, but also fuck you too. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this, you should totally subscribe and also comment. I respond to those. But until next time guys, see ya.